All right, let's talk about some incredible new research that could completely flip the script on how we track our health. We're looking at a smart ring that's designed to do something pretty amazing. Replace that bulky, annoying blood pressure cuff. This is cool stuff, so let's get right into it. First things first, let's just remember why this matters so much. The stakes could not be higher. Cardiovascular diseases are, hands down, the #1 cause of death across the entire globe. That's not just some abstract number. It's why keeping an eye on our heart health is absolutely essential. And that leads to this kind of a huge contradiction, right? If blood pressure is one of the most important signs of our health, why is it still such a pain to measure? I mean, that traditional cuff, it squeezes your arm, it gives you one single reading at one moment in time. You can't exactly wear it all day to see what's really going on. Yeah, researchers actually have a name for this, the cuff conundrum, and it is the exact problem that this new smart ring is trying to solve. So let's break down why our current options just aren't cutting it. Look, it's not like people haven't tried to fix this. Of course, the old school cuffs are a non-starter for 24/7 monitoring. But even the fancy smartwatches we have today can struggle. Just moving your wrist around can knock the sensors out of place and mess up the reading. And other cuffless technologies, they tend to need really complicated setups, or they have their own, unique set of problems. So clearly, what was needed here was a totally fresh start. Not just making something smaller, but finding a fundamentally better, more reliable way to listen to our body's signals. It was time to go back to the drawing board. Okay, so to really get what makes this ring special, you have to understand the different ways we can sense blood pressure. Most wearables today use optical sensors, that's PPG. They shine a light into your skin, but that can be thrown off by things like skin tone, BMI, even how cold your hands are. Then you've got electrical methods, but those usually need a big surface area. But this third column, this is where things get interesting. What if you could sense the actual physical movement of the artery? And that's exactly what they did, using something called Hall effect sensing. Don't worry about the name. The concept is actually pretty simple and, frankly, genius. It's just a super sensitive way to detect tiny changes in a magnetic field. The big idea here, put a tiny magnet right over the artery in your finger, and then use a sensor to watch it physically bob up and down with every single heartbeat. So, the science is cool, right? But how do you actually package that into a comfortable ring that someone would actually want to wear all day? Let's take a look at the actual design. And here it is. It just looks like a clean, modern ring. But inside that 3D printed shell is where the magic happens. You've got the sensor, the magnet, and a soft silicone layer to make it comfortable. They chose the finger for a really smart reason. The artery there is close to the surface, and your finger doesn't move in a way that would disrupt the signal, so it's the perfect spot. This diagram just shows it all perfectly. Think of the magnet like a tiny little buoy floating on the surface of your skin, right over your artery. When a pulse of blood comes through, the artery swells, and it pushes that little buoy up. It's a microscopic movement, but it's more than enough to change the magnetic field, and that's exactly what the Hall sensor is built to detect. So let's walk through that whole process one more time. Step 1, your heart beats, and a pressure wave travels through your artery. Step 2, the magnet on your finger literally rides that wave. Step 3, the sensor turns that physical movement into a clean electrical signal. And then the final step, a smart machine learning model looks at the unique shape of that wave and translates it into a blood pressure reading. All right, so a clever design is one thing, but the million-dollar question is, does the thing actually work? To find out, the researchers had to put this ring through a serious stress test. And this was a real hurdle. I mean, it's not enough to see if the ring works when you're just sitting calmly on a chair. To really prove its worth, they had to test it while a person's blood pressure was actively going up and down. So here's the game plan they came up with. They had 4 healthy participants. For their gold standard comparison, they used a clinical-grade device that also measures blood pressure with every single heartbeat. They took a baseline reading while everyone was relaxed, and they did this with something called the cold pressor test. Now, it sounds a little dramatic, but it's actually a super common and totally safe way to get the body to temporarily raise its own blood pressure. You just put a hand in some ice water, and your nervous system naturally responds. This gave them the perfect way to see how the ring performed across a whole range of blood pressure values. So they ran the tests, they gathered all the data, at rest, under stress, and then they crunched the numbers. So how did the little ring stack up against the big clinical machine? Well, the results were, frankly, really impressive. The punchline? It earned a grade A. That's according to the super strict standards of the British Hypertension Society. We're talking the highest possible rating you can get, which means it demonstrated a high level of clinical accuracy. So what does grade A actually mean in real numbers? Well, to get that grade, at least 60% of your readings have to be within 5 points of the real measurement. For the top number, systolic pressure, the ring just squeaked by at 61%. But for the bottom number, diastolic, whoa, it was spot on 85% of the time. That's incredibly accurate. And if you're a visual person, these charts say it all. They plotted over 7,000 individual heartbeats. And what you're looking at is a comparison between the ring and the clinical device. You see how all those little blue dots are huddled so tightly along that straight line? That's exactly what you want to see. It means the ring and the super expensive medical gear were basically saying the same thing over and over again. And the numbers back that up completely. On average, the error was less than 5 points for systolic and less than 3 for diastolic. That is tiny. And the correlation scores, 0.90 and 0.87, that's just an incredibly strong, reliable performance. So, in the end, what the researchers are basically saying is, hey, this is a really big deal. This is a huge step toward a future where anybody can accurately track their blood pressure 24/7 without even thinking about it. Which leaves us with a pretty fascinating question to think about. We've watched tech go from huge desks to our pockets, and now it's literally on our bodies. And with results like these, it's not really a question of if anymore, but when. A simple piece of jewelry on your finger could become one of the most powerful tools you have to protect your health.